have it. Ow. No. It's taller than me. And Steve's brother-in-law's dog.
Did Steve always have to tell stories on the bike?
What was it?
Spider! So, there is Steve, and Steve's brother just got a brand new Bronco 2, which is actually 1974, but we wanted to test out Steve and his brothers wanted to test out the mudding capabilities of this thing. So, we've just gone shooting, so we have about 10 guns in the truck. I mean, Steve does. Has 10 guns in the truck. And they're going out this road called Preacher's Slough Road. And that's where all the mudding people like to go. They were kind of wannabes in their little Bronco too. And they go flying through some puddles. You know, it's like kind of just washing around the tires. And it was really cool. And then Steve's brother-in-law pulls up in front of this thing that he calls a puddle, but I think it was actually grass pond or something because it's huge. And he's like, oh. So he like. He takes off into it, and water's like going over the windshield. It was so deep, it was at the top of the doors. And we get right in the middle, and some water got in the intake, and boom, it's dead. And we're sitting there in the middle of this little pond, and we're just really quiet because we're stuck in the middle of a pond. Me and Steve is stuck. And you can hear this little. And water's kind of getting like this deep on the floor. So Steve calls his uncle. He's like, "Uncle, we're stuck." And Uncle wasn't home at that time. So my brother climbs out one of the windows and gets on top of the truck.
Your brother?
Steve's brother! Comes out of one of the windows.
He really wants to be Steve, so Steve is that.
Steve is so cool. What? Anyway, Steve's brother gets out on top of the truck and like jumps to land, and he has like all the guns. So he's like a walking armory. We were gonna try and hitchhike. I mean, Steve was gonna try and hitchhike with all the guns. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that. But anyway, Steve himself was about 14 at that time, so he was shorter a little bit.
How do you know all these stories?
Steve and I are very close. Like this.
Very close.
But
You guys are almost the same person.
almost.
Yeah.
So Steve's brother-in-law gets up on the roof, and this guy's huge, like monster, like Fezzik last night type deal. And he's on the roof of this poor little Bronco 2, and then he reaches down and he gets the dog by the collar, and like drags him up. He's a big black lab. And so now there's a big guy and a dog on top of the car. Ouch. That hurt. Anyway, so now there's a big guy and a dog on top of the thing, and Steve thinks he's gonna try one last time to get it started, and it starts like none other. And so Steve's in the driver's seat like and Steve's brother and an aneurysm. So, no, we will not. Too bad. So, Steve's brother-in-law thinks that Steve's going to leave while he's still on the roof, and he's going to fall into the scum pond thing. So he starts screaming and yelling and running around on the roof. And it's really loud in the truck by now, and so brother-in-law grabs the lab and like throws it off into the bushes. The dog's like, and he lays down on top of the car like this. And then I didn't go anywhere because I was like 14, and I mean Steve was like 14 and didn't quite know what he was doing very well. Keep it going type deal. So it's amazing how fast a guy that big can get in the car. Boom! He's in the passenger seat, pops it in drive, and Steve like floors it all the way out of the pond. It was amazing how Steve and his brother-in-law opened the doors on the other side of the pond, and once they got out of the pond up on the bank, they opened the doors of the truck. Once they got to the other side of the pond, and like 20 gallons of water pour out the doors. And the dog came back, and Steve and his brother-in-law got out of there and laughed. Like, Steve has never laughed that hard. It was amazing. Then they all got back in the truck, turned around, drove back through the pond. Really smart. But it worked out this time. And everybody lived happily ever after.
Yes.
Except for the window wipers shorted out, and so all the way home in the wonderful hot weather. It was really cool. Everybody thought we were. And every now and then the horn would short out too. Water damage isn't cool. You guys ever heard of hooking up your horn to people's brake lights?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?